Welcome back to the Omni Stage at Event Tech Live, USA and Canada 2021, and a very warm welcome to our next speaker. Delivering the session, How to Activate Your Participants, I'm delighted to say that Managing Director at Engaging Meetings Limited, Hector Venegas, joins us here now. Hector, very nice to see you and welcome to Event Tech Live.
Having me.
I shall hand straight over to you to begin your session, and we'll join you back a little bit later on for some questions from our audience.
Well, hello. I hope you're hearing me well, and I hope you are delighted. I am alone. Done that for a while, which is kind of sad, but it is the time we are living in, right? Well, my name is Hector Venegas, as James just said, and I'm a meeting designer. So Engaging Meetings, my company, is working with meeting design. So we are taking care to find the objectives and to reach the objectives of our clients' meetings and events. I'm a consultant and a coach for communication, a lecturer and a keynote speaker. I have spoken in several places in this world, and I love speaking, as you can tell. And basically, I'm a lawyer. So I studied law here in Cologne. I never practiced law, though. Immediately after finishing law school, after graduating from law school, I went into the meetings and events industry, and I have never, ever looked back because I love this industry. I love the way we are working with people, and I love to work with people. 26 years I have been in this industry now. And I have been very active in MPI, Meeting Professionals Internationals, for the ones that do not know. And I was the chapter president of the Germany chapter for long years, very long years, basically. And I was also involved in the European Advisory Council. But the greatest thing I ever achieved in my whole life, and basically I think the greatest thing I will ever achieve, is being the father of 3 amazing boys, which I was just in the yard of my ex-wife. Okay, whatever. And well, to talk to you about active involvement and to talk to you about how to activate your participants. I joined some sessions yesterday and today also some short sessions. And as we are meeting in different kind of scenarios right now, we have to rethink how we are doing that. Be it face-to-face or be it in online meetings or hybrid meetings, it's all basically the same thing. We need to activate the participants. Without that, we will not achieve anything. So we have to rethink how it is, what is the DNA of any kind of meeting? What is the essential part of any kind of meeting? What is it, what we are working on? And what it is, basically, it all comes down to one word, and that is the experience. It is about the participants' experience. And you will hear me talk about participants all the way because I don't like words like attendees, audience, or delegates. There's so many words for the people that have to come to our meetings, some have to, that love to come to our meetings, and that are there. The meetings we do for these people. And if we do face-to-face meetings, we end up sometimes happily talking to beautiful Danish girls, and we end up here in this place where we share ideas, we talk to people, we interact and make something happen. And that is what makes any kind of meeting really interesting. So if we think about any meeting we have, and as a meeting designer, I have to work with my clients, which is sometimes not easy to work on the objectives. So the objectives is basically the main part of it. When I ask my clients, what are the objectives of your meeting or event? They sometimes say, but it's our management meeting. We do that twice a year. So what do you mean with objectives? We have to do it. We have to get together. We have to talk about strategies. We have to talk about change management, whatever it is. But they don't think about the objectives. So this is basically the first thing I have to deal with them. So make sure that we really know the objectives so that we can work on them. We have to consider that we are all different people. And so working on the objectives is something, of course, that is also related to how we are working with the participants. I work with a meeting design concept called Motivation, and Motivation is based on 5 pillars. The first pillar is the creative setup. So how do we do all the setup? A little bit more creative, a little bit fun, a little nice, depending on how we do it. But it has to be paying on to the objectives. The second one is local inspiration. So if we do a meeting, for example, somewhere in Frankfurt or in Tokyo or in New York, all these places have to be or have to play a major role within the meeting. Otherwise, why would we go there? If we do it online, different. I'll come to that later. Active involvement is, of course, one of the most important things, and that's what we're doing here and what we're talking about. So we have to actively involve people. People learn when they're involved. People do something when they're involved. People understand. People share. People are happy when they're involved. Then responsible thinking. We have to be responsible with all the time, the knowledge, the money, and, of course, with our planet in the end. And then, of course, the return on investment. We want to have a return on investment. But all these things are really supporting the objectives. So all these 5 elements have to be in line with the objectives. How many times have we seen something that was not all in line with the objectives? So many, many, many times. And we have to consider that we are all different kind of behavioral types and also different kind of learning types. So if we consider our group of people that we invite to our meetings and events, or that come to our meetings and events, we have to think about them and see what kind of people they are. Sometimes we will not know exactly, but we have to figure out at least. So we have to somehow find a way of interacting with them to find out what kind of people they are. There are several tools to work with the behavioral types of people, like DISC, for example, which we work with, or different other types. It doesn't matter. Just to have to consider that you are talking to different kind of behavioral types and also different kind of learning types. So also some are visual, some are more auditory, and of course a lot of people, like myself, for example, are kinesthetic. If we do face-to-face meetings, sometimes a lot of these things are just pushed aside because of the content, because of whatever it is happening, because of the great speaker on stage, or whatever it is. And so I'm showing you here a picture of which I usually show my students, and I tell them, please find out mistakes. And I think we came up with 25 mistakes approximately. I'm not going to name them all. But you see here a picture of an event where a lot of things are going wrong. There's a person or 3 people on stage. The stage is highly illuminated. And there's a video screen on top so that we can see a little bit closer of these people, and they might be talking something very interesting. The moderator is in the far left corner, standing at some kind of high table in the dark. I don't know what he's doing there. And the people, all the participants, I would call them, but these are definitely audience, are sitting in nicely, neatly put rows and all in the dark. What happens is we see the blue faces. So people are just torn to their devices and they are chatting, they are watching YouTube cat videos, whatever it is. But they are the so-called blue faces from the front, and I'm moderating a lot of events. It's great to see those people. All the faces, they shine blue. So these are the blue faces. So what they're doing basically, and the only ones that are not on the phone are the ones that are sleeping. We lose them. We lose them fast. And I'm sure it has happened a lot to you. By the way, James is taking all the questions you might have. Please put in any kind of questions you might have, and I'll be happy to answer some of the questions in the end. So this is to you, basically. Please put in any kind of things that you have experienced in the past, good or bad. A lot of bad things are in mind. The good things usually we push aside, unfortunately. But fact is that we are living in a world where everything is kind of fast. So our attention span in the year 2000 was about 12 seconds and went down in 2013 about 8 seconds. And the attention span of a goldfish is longer than that. Actually, I don't know how they measured that, but okay. Would have been nice to see the fish. But our attention span has lowered dramatically. And that is due to our very fast life. When I started in this industry, I would get an email from a client and he would consider or hope for a response within 24 hours. Hours, not minutes, not seconds. Nowadays, a customer usually doesn't write me an email anymore. It's a WhatsApp message just saying, hey, I need this and this and this, and he wants an immediate response, even though if it's just saying, hey, I'm sorry, I'm in a meeting, I'm going to come back to you soon. But he wants an immediate response, so our attention span gets lower and lower and lower. In meetings, we have to consider that that is also the case. So if you have, for example, a perfectly great speaker, let's say this guy on the left side is an amazing speaker, and he's talking about something very, very interesting. And all these people, let's just assume they're sitting in a nice place with more light. But okay, they're sitting there and they are very interested in what this guy is telling them. The time they have to really acknowledge and to really suck in what he's telling is not more than 20 minutes. We cannot, our brain is not working for more than that. And it gets lower, as I said. So we are not able to take all that in for more than 20 minutes. And that is the reason why TED Talks, for example, are limited to 18 minutes. I'm not saying a speaker cannot talk more than that, but we have to shorten it and we have to somehow make people interact, ask them a question, do some interaction in between. Because then our brain will be rebooted and we are able to listen a little bit more. I'm not saying we should have speeches of 2 hours. I have experienced that too. But it's possible more than 20 minutes if you interact with these people. And interaction, of course, can be done via apps. There are amazing apps out there. It can be done with a Q&A, and a Q&A should be in between. I know it's happening here too. But a Q&A should not be at the end of the speakers. So we should somehow make people, if they have a question, they should be able to put the question out there immediately by the time the question comes to their heads. Because by the time they think about the question, they will rethink it and maybe it's not that interesting. Maybe it's just interesting for me. Maybe he said that and I didn't hear it or whatever. So we're going to rethink that. So what we do in most meetings, face-to-face, online, hybrid, it doesn't matter. What I'm doing right now, by the way, don't tell anyone, is this. So somebody is in the front and saying blah, 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 blah. Some with a nice voice, some with good intonation. Others are doing it like that. And hello, my name is Hector, and I'm going to talk to you about something very interesting. But sometimes there's somebody in the group saying blah, blah, blah back to you. That's not enough. What we need to create is this. So a lot of people talking to one another, interacting with one another. All these green people might be here, the participants, and the color people might be some kind of ambassadors of some kind of knowledge, or sucking in, putting in some new ideas and making them share. We need more interactions, and that is not just the Q&A at the end. Nobody wants to talk into a microphone anyway, and so that makes things harder. We can interact, for example, like you have seen these cubes that you throw in, and people can talk into a cube, whatever it is, but we have to make them interact. And we are coming now to a place where it's getting harder and harder and harder to interact, especially in online settings. Sometimes we can have impulses. So, for example, a motivational speaker that starts with a nice impulse, with a nice, great talk, and it's like, oh my God, this is good, to get the people into the right mindset. But sometimes, please be careful with that, because it can be intimidatingly loud. So, but to create a good mindset is good to start. But then we have to somehow get that energy and start working with those people. So this, for example, is a picture of a conference in Copenhagen. And in this, you can see how the energy the people are in. They are interacting. There's no one, literally no one, that is not interacting. Everyone is interacting, and they're doing some silly things. They're having fun. They're different things, but they will remember that a lifetime. Everyone who was at that conference will remember it a lifetime, and they will remember the content. And that's what we want to achieve, isn't it? So we can only make that happen if we interact with people. This is another picture, for example, for a conference I did in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. And here, these people are talking about topics they want to talk about and topics that they are able to learn from. So they go to tables, and we did a kind of open space system where people would go to tables and would put themselves in the name, insert their name somewhere on the board, and then they would be able to come to a table and discuss different topics they want to discuss. It was an HR conference, and so the topics were all about human resources and how to manage them. So this is something where people interact. This is something where we would, in a face-to-face meeting, make that possible. In the end of a long conference, in the end of this conference, it would have been so nice to get together and celebrate, isn't it? That is the moment of all conference. That is sometimes the reason why people go to conferences, honestly. Because this is where the foundation for future possible collaborations is built. We are social beings. We need social bonding. We need to create something. We need to make it work. And this is where it happens. So that's why we love it. And that's why it's important. So if we go to this online world we are living in right now, and don't get me wrong, I'm loving it. I'm really loving it. I'm just not the one that is saying, oh my God, we will not go back into face-to-face meetings. I'm saying we learned a lot about online meetings, and we learned a lot about hybrid meetings. And that is essential, and that is good, and that is going to give us possibilities to create great experiences for our participants in the future. But yes, we will get back together at other meetings. So now we have the possibility to choose, which we did not have before, because platforms were not as good, and we were not as experienced in online meetings. We have to admit that. But if we keep on talking about audience and broadcasting and all these things, what I heard yesterday, and we have to get a better broadcast and like TV studios and to bring all that on. And then we experience tech problems. We had them yesterday again. It always happens because there are too many things that cannot be controlled. It is on your side, it is on the side of the provider, it is on the side of service, it is on the side of my side. So my Wi-Fi, we were just working on that because my Wi-Fi was not as good as it was supposed to be. I know. Sometimes we have problems, or the devices. So there's a lot of issues going on. But we have to accept that issues will continue. We might get better in that when digitalization is something that is not only a buzzword, but reality. But nevertheless, we have to admit that things might be hard, and we have to take that into consideration too. But when we do our online, we have more distractions. So in online and hybrid meetings, we have more distractions of the people. So nobody sees if you're on your phone. I can just switch off my camera and just make whatever I have to do here. My kids might come up here and say, Dad, I need your help. And I would just, I'll mute myself, say, what is it? And so distractions are everywhere. So we have to take into consideration that the people we are talking to are not in the room. And that creates, of course, more distraction. If we have it here, for example, a typical mom, a typical dad, being at home, it's a lot of distractions. So if we take that into consideration, and if we work with the agenda, for example, that we want to create, we cannot just copy paste an agenda we would have done. This is a typical agenda for any kind of conference. We would have done in a normal setting, in a face-to-face setting, like long speeches of 45 minutes, short breaks, and then again long speeches, then divided in 2 different rooms and do this and that. It's just not copy-paste. By the start of the pandemic, a lot of people just copy-pasted what they would do face-to-face onto online world. And that will not work and is not working. So in online meetings, we have to cut the chunks even shorter. A conference has to be short. It's just impossible to make it a few hours. It's better to make it expanded for a couple of days, and instead of that, just narrowing the time, just say between midday and early afternoon, or early afternoon until late afternoon, depending on where you are, of course, and depending who you want to reach. But cut the things shorter. Every session has to be shorter, and you have to be able to interact. So if you are cutting things shorter, you will be able to interact. Way more break time. You have to break, more breaks. More breaks than you actually, because there are these bio breaks where we all have to sometimes go to some places. And they are then breaks where we need to just refill a bottle of water or whatever it is, or talk to our kids, or do emails or whatever, because we are not in the environment of a face-to-face meeting where we would say, okay, whatever happens, kids are not here, emails can be done tomorrow or the day after, the day I'm back in the office. Interactions are essential even more than in regular face-to-face meetings, but so you can do some pollings in between, ask people some questions, ask them questions about how they're doing, ask them questions to get them aha moments, and ask them questions about different things, about their experience of things. So I'm hoping you're putting in some questions right now. Then, of course, you give them possibilities to raise their hands virtually. Don't do it like my son did for the first meeting he had, an online meeting, Teams meeting with school. And the teacher said, if you want to have a question, raise your hand. And my poor son was sitting there with his hands up and waiting for somebody to just pick him. It didn't work. Then again, quizzes, gamification. I have done so many gamification elements in my meetings and workshops and different kind of events that I did. And a lot of times a client says, no, we are a bank. This is a strategy meeting of a really big, huge bank. We are serious people. We cannot do games. Oh yes, we can. And we should. We all love games. It has to be purposeful, of course. And yes, the games can be within meetings and events content. So we can use the content of the meetings and events just to create something fun, something buzz, something interesting, and to get the people out of their mindset, get them out of their comfort zone. Then again, we have to consider that we have to sit in good light. So if you look at the pictures, both pictures are pretty much bad. I hope my lighting is good. I don't know. But we have to consider that we put ourselves in good light so that people actually can see us. If their possibilities technology-wise are good, they can at least see us nicely and maybe get the picture bigger, because it's nicer to see people. For my students, I tell them all the time, please switch on their camera, because I want to see you. I want to see your reactions. I want to see you frowning if you cannot understand me. I want to see what's happening. And that, of course, is not possible if you have a lot of people online meeting. That, of course, is also not possible if you switch off the cameras. If you think about what I said before about the social bonding, the networking part is the hardest to really recreate. Networking is an essential part. A lot of customers ask me deliberately to do networking within the meetings and events because they see how important it is. And online, it is even harder. I've been to a conference. I was a speaker at a conference recently, and we used a thing called Hubilo, which is one of the sponsors here. But this is where trust is created with the networking. So the Hubilo part is nice, so people can just come in and within the break, they can sit down at a table and then talk to you face to face. So basically as a video meeting and talk to you. So it's a good solution. There are a lot of other solutions out there, and we have to create possibilities to do interactions. If we think of hybrid, we have to think of one thing, is that it is two different kind of experiences. We cannot assume that we will create one experience for the online community and the same experience for the face-to-face community. That's not going to happen. It's two different kind of experience. Nevertheless, we have to make them interact in between, make them share somehow, make them share thoughts, make the online community work on something, make the face-to-face community work on something, and then create some sharing possibilities. Cut everything shorter and make them talk to one another all the time. And I know it's not easy, and we have to somehow create that, getting people out of their comfort zone. The comfort zone is something where we are okay. Sometimes we move into the learning zone, but what we have to create is really expand the comfort zone and go more into the learning zone without pushing them into the panic zone. It was a short session, and I know I can talk about that, and I guess you have seen that. I can talk about that forever. I love talking about it because it's my life. It's basically what I do, interacting with people. I love interactions. In the end, what we want to achieve is having happy participants, and that is only possible if we make them real participants. So that is all about me, and passing on to James now. And if there were some questions, we have now some couple of minutes where I'm happy to answer some questions if we have them. James.
Hello, Hector. Thank you very much for that session, and great for you to be here today. And can I just congratulate you on a magnificent selection of lanyards just behind you in the background there from all the different events that from all the different. It feels like such a long time ago that we were able to don a lanyard as we walked into a venue. You know, I think it's great that you've got them on display to remind us all of what it was like to do that. You know, has anybody created the virtual lanyard yet, or are people still sending them out for virtual events? That'd be great.
I don't think so, but it would be a nice idea. Yeah, we should create that.
A question that I'd like to put to you, Hector, and it was something that related to one of the slides. I think it was slide 8 in your presentation deck, looking at kinesthetic hands-on activity and how difficult that may be to incorporate. With current social distancing, certainly in the medium to long term, and more particularly in terms of audiences, attendees who may wish to retain an element of distancing, even once guidelines are relaxed.
Well, that definitely will happen. As I said, I mean, online meetings and hybrid meetings will continue, and that is a good idea because some of the meetings really can happen online. But we have to rethink that. So all these things, elements like, for example, networking, we have to somehow make it happen, replace that usual bonding. And sometimes some things like the kinesthetic, for example, which is very important for me, is possible if we send our participants, for example, some kind of box, some toolbox beforehand. And if we assign them for the meeting, not only be a listener, an audience, but we assign them a task where they have to act and react on specific sessions. So we tell them, okay, we have sent you a package. Now please open the package and look inside. And you will find a nice book. And in this booklet, you will find this and that. Your task now is to do whatever it is. This is kinesthetic, worked with online, with cooperation, with collaboration, co-creation, and all these elements which make us think, which make us maneuver all our best that we have and interact with people. And that's possible. It is definitely possible, but we have to do something for that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I mean, in terms of sending them something like that and providing those hands-on materials maybe for people so that they don't have to maybe navigate around an event venue, in a hybrid event and pick them up themselves. It's interesting that, you refer to it in one term, and yet earlier on today when we had Glenn Stress from Marriott Hotels talking about how they're adapting their venues, they've come up with this fantastic sort of luxury element of how they're setting out their conference rooms now with a comfortable chair, a coffee table next to every chair. That coffee table is then set up with lots of different snacks, water, chargers, everything that person may need, and that's doing, I suppose, in essence what you're suggesting, but they're coming at it from a customer service angle, but it's also ultimately engagement.
It is basically to create a session where people are really feeling relaxed and feeling in the right mood to attend the session. And that is not created by just putting chairs next to one another and making people sit nicely in rows. That's not going to happen. So we have to think, that's what I said about the creative setup. The setup also has to be in regards to the objectives. And if the setup is like that, it's amazing because people feel nice, feel cozy, feel welcome, and feel good. And if you feel good, if you're in a moment and a surrounding where you feel good, you will have the perfect setting to work with your brain, to learn, to share, to whatever. So that is what we need. Absolutely. Very well done.
Absolutely. If you would like to connect with Hector, please do so via the Event Tech Live platform. If you'd like to ask him any more questions, follow up some of the points that he's made in his session, you can do that. You can connect with all of our speakers and all of our panelists through the event platform. But for now, we thank Hector Venegas for joining Event Tech Live today. Hector, we hope to see you very soon, and we hope to see everybody else soon.